Taking the night shift security job at the old abandoned hospital seemed like easy money at first. The place was massive, endless corridors, vacant wards, and creaky elevator that groaned up and down all night. My job was simple. Walk the halls, check the exits, make sure no local kids had broken in to drink or vandalize anything. The pay was good and the hours quiet, or so I thought that first night. Around 2 a.m., I made my rounds, flashing my light down the long, dark hallways. The deeper I went, the colder and more uneasy I felt, like I was being watched. I shook off the feeling and chalked it up to working alone in a big, empty building. As I turned the corner, I thought I heard a loud bang coming from the end of the hall. I rushed over but found nothing, no signs of intrusion. The exit door was still chained. Must be this old building settling, I told myself. Over the next few weeks, strange things kept happening. I'd hear scratching sounds in the walls, see flickering lights at the end of corridors. Sometimes I thought I could make out a shadowy figure at the edge of my vision, but when I swung my flashlight over, there would be nothing. My imagination was just getting the better of me, I figured. But deep down, the encounters left me feeling increasingly unsettled. About a month into the job, things got much weirder. I started finding old patient belongings that I knew weren't there the night before. A tattered bathrobe, a lone slipper, an overturned wheelchair. It was bizarre, like someone was living here and messing with me. My heart started racing every time I made my rounds, wondering what oddity I would come across next. Then, late one Friday night, I said something that still haunts my dreams. As I walked down the hall, I noticed one of the patient room's doors was ever so slightly ajar. I knew I had shut it earlier. Suddenly, a beam of light switched on inside. This was no vagabond. Someone had turned on the power. Terrified, I burst through the door, ready to confront whoever was inside. But the room was completely empty, filled only by a piercing cold that cut straight through me. I quickly searched every corner, but there was nobody there. As I went to leave, the door slammed shut behind me, enveloping me in darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, but it flickered off. Then the temperature dropped even more, my breath coming out in icy puffs. From the blackness, I heard a scratching voice utter, "Get out." Before I could react, an unseen force picked me up and hurled me backwards. I hit the ground hard, writhing in agony. When I looked up, I saw a gruesome, gaunt face staring down at me. Behind it, other ghostly shapes shuffled forwards, their hollow eyes fixed on me. Frozen in terror, I managed to scramble to my feet and sprint down the hall, pursued by shrieks echoing all around. At last I found the exit and burst outside, not stopping until I reached the safety of my car. I tore out of the parking lot, my heart pounding as I gasped for air. What were those phantoms? What did they want with me? I decided I'd go to the police, though I doubted they would believe such a far-fetched tale. As I pulled up to a red light, I glanced in my rear-view mirror and noticed a dark figure sitting in the back seat. Swirling around, I saw nothing but an empty back seat. The next several weeks, I agonized over what I witnessed. I quit the security job but was too afraid to tell anyone, sensing they would think I was crazy. I stopped sleeping, jolting awake from the slightest sound. But the haunting visions from the hospital kept invading my dreams every time I closed my eyes. I knew the ghoulish shapes were after me now. I could feel their cold presence following me, hiding in the shadows. Exhausted and paranoid, I decided my only choice was to go back to that dreaded place in an attempt to record proof on my phone. My hands shook as I crept through the dark halls I used to guard, audio recorder at the ready. As I entered the room where I first saw those phantoms, I stilled my nerves and called out, "What do you want from me?" The temperature instantly plummeted. Strange whispers echoed from all around as I scanned my flashlight beam around the empty room. Then, in the darkness, materialized that charred face, even more grotesque than before. It hovered towards me, flesh dripping, as it unleashed an unearthly wail. Behind it swirled shadowy skeletal shapes. They lunged towards me faster than I could run. When I came to, I was lying in a ditch by the roadside. It was early morning, though I had no memory after entering the hospital the previous night. My clothes were badly torn, my ankles swollen. Was it already a dream? But as I struggled to my feet, I knew it was all horribly real. Over the next month, I became increasingly sullen and withdrawn. Whenever anyone mentioned my injury or questioned my behavior, I evaded them. No one would believe those otherworldly horrors I witnessed. Sometimes I doubted myself. Perhaps it truly was madness. But the visions persisted. I jumped at every little sound. I barricaded my bedroom door each night, yet still couldn't sleep, sensing those apparitions lurking in the darkness, watching me, hunting me, until I could bear it no more. One morning, I loaded all my cash and a 9mm pistol into my truck. As I sped towards the abandoned hospital, my hands gripped the wheel with white knuckles. I didn't know what I would confront there this time, but I knew I had to end this. I squeezed the cold steel of the pistol, my last line of defense if things went wrong. I searched every room, ready to fire on anything that moved. At last, in the basement furnace room, I spotted a worn leather journal tucked behind a rusty boiler. With trembling hands, I opened it and discovered page after page filled with terrified ramblings of myself. But how? Confused, I leafed through the decaying book where the matte writing spoke of ghouls, shadows, and warnings to myself. Then the apparition swirled out of the gloom around me. My blood turned to ice as I raised the pistol with quivering hands. But before I could fire, the specter spoke in a singular raspy voice only I could hear. "We are not the ones hunting you. We are the hunted remnants of past horrors once committed here. You must break the cycle before it consumes you." I blinked in confusion until noticing in the margin of the journal today's date with one word scrawled next to it: liberation. Then suddenly everything clicked into horrible clarity. There was only one way to end this nightmare. I raised the pistol with resolve, knowing there was no other choice. At dawn, a gunshot echoed from the abandoned house. Inside, the journal lays open to a fresh entry describing the fate of yet another night watchman, driven past the brink of madness by the ghosts of the past. New pages appear each day chronicling the story as local legend says it replays over again every few decades. awaiting another hapless victim to take up the mantle until the cycle starts anew once more. When police arrived later, they discovered debris scattered about from a struggle, small smears of blood on the walls leading to the basement, and a smoldering hole ripped through the old leather journal as if something had emerged directly out of its pages. But nobody was ever found. The only other evidence was a shattered flashlight and a lone security guard's cap stained with dirt and blood. In the decades since, the haunted hospital has never stayed occupied for long. New watchmen quit before their first shift ends. Urban explorers flee from the premises in terror, uttering nonsensical cries about spirits bursting forth from an old book within. Each night the apparitions roam the halls, lurking in the darkness, silently awaiting the next guard foolish enough to roam their domain. The journal foretells an endless cycle of horror at the haunted hospital where I once worked the night watch. Decades later, visions of writhing phantoms still haunt me, watching from the shadows. With my dying breaths, I warned my grandson to never take the night watch at an empty hospital, no matter how desperate, if he valued his life and sanity. My heart then failed, but the eternal nightmare persists.